Hey Bio20s, welcome to my video series where I'll be going over the main topics in the course. Today we're going to be discussing photosynthetic pigments, chloroplasts, and the light spectrum. So when you look at a plant, so a plant appears green to us because of a very special pigment called chlorophyll. Now chlorophyll is the pigment that resides within the chloroplast. And you might remember learning about this in previous science courses, remembering that chlorophyll inside of a chloroplast being the part of a plant cell where photosynthesis occurs. Now, not only do the chloroplasts give the plant their green color, they also allow it to perform the process of photosynthesis. So let's take a look at a chloroplast. So this is what a chloroplast will look like, and you can see here, this is what one would look like under a microscope. In this diagram here, there's two main areas that I want to highlight. So there's two main areas I want to highlight, and this will be more important as we talk about this in our next couple of videos. The first one I want to highlight is the thylakoid. So the thylakoid are these little green discs here. They kind of look like little pancakes stacked on top of one another. This is where one part of photosynthesis takes occurs. This is where the light-dependent reaction occurs. And when we look at a stack of thylakoids, we call that stack of thylakoids a granum. So a granum would be a stack of thylakoids. Then we see these little kind of bridges connecting the thylakoids. We refer to these as the lamella. The other thing I want to highlight, the other really important part I want to highlight is this, which is called the stroma. This is kind of the area, the fluid-filled area surrounding the thylakoids, and this is where the second half of photosynthesis takes place, which is called the light-independent reaction. Other than that though, the chloroplast has an outer membrane, it has an inner membrane, so two membranes, and then the space between the membranes is called, you guessed it, the intermembrane space. Now, if we look even closer inside of a thylakoid, so once again, this is where the light-dependent reaction takes place. We're going to see those pigments we just talked about, the chlorophyll. The chlorophyll are actually embedded in the membrane of the thylakoid itself. And the chlorophyll is going to play a major role in the light-dependent reaction. So this is what the thylakoid membrane would look like. So this is the outside of the thylakoid, this is the inside of the thylakoid, and then embedded in that membrane would be those chlorophyll pigments. Now, when we talk about chlorophyll, the main job of chlorophyll and other photosynthetic pigments, the main job is to capture light energy. Photons, they are small bundles of light that the chlorophyll are going to capture and then use that light to almost power the process of photosynthesis. When we think of light energy, it can come in two different wavelengths, a shorter wavelength or a lower wavelength, and this will determine how much energy it has. Higher energy will have a shorter wavelength, lower wavelengths will have a longer wavelengths will have a lower energy. So if you think of all the different energy that we have, gamma rays, X-rays, UV, infrared, microwaves, radio waves, all this different energy, this little sliver here is what we can actually see. This is our very tiny visible light spectrum that our eyes can actually process. So we can see light on the lower end here, like your purple, blue, green in the middle, all the way to the higher end being your yellow, orange, and red. So these would be the colors that we can see. Then at your lower energy frequency, right, at your lower energy frequency, you'd have your radio waves, microwaves, and then your infrared waves. Radio waves, microwaves, they're lower energy, they're lower frequency, they have a longer wavelength. In general, they're not as dangerous for us, right? So for example, like right now as you're watching this video, I'm sure some radio waves are passing through you right now. Not to be concerned, but it wouldn't really cause anything bad to happen. Then we move forward with the visible light. Once again, this is the light we can see, and then there's UV. So UV, this would be the radiation coming from the sun. A little bit higher frequency, not too dangerous, but once again, if we're not wearing sunscreen, if we're not protecting ourselves, can cause issues, can cause our cells to mutate, become cancerous. We go further to X-rays and gamma rays. If we're being exposed, hopefully no one's exposed to gamma rays, but if you're exposed to things like X-rays, you probably want to take the necessary safety precautions because it is on the higher energy side of the spectrum. And you'll notice here that the wavelengths do get shorter as we go more to this side of the light spectrum. Now, light from the sun is a mixture of things, right? There's some visible light, so we can see it. There's some UV light. There's a whole bunch of, there's a little bit infrared. There's a lot of mixes in there. Now, the visible light is captured by the photosynthetic organism, like your plants, your algae, etc. And then it is transformed into chemical energy that is stored for later. Now, you might remember this from previous science classes, but we know that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form to another. So what the plant is going to try and do is going to try and take that solar energy and transform it into chemical energy. So in this case, glucose. Okay, now chlorophyll, it comes in different versions. The main type of chlorophyll that all photosynthetic plants will have is called chlorophyll A. Now chlorophyll A, all photosynthetic plants have this. This is like your main pigment. This is the one doing the heavy lifting. It will be the primary pigment that will capture light. Then we have what are called accessory pigments. These are pigments that help the chlorophyll A. So we have something like chlorophyll B. It doesn't absorb as well as chlorophyll A, but it maybe picks up some pieces that the chlorophyll A misses. And then we have something like, and there's other pigments out there. These are just a few examples. Carotenoids I want to bring up because they're interesting. We actually have a ton of them in things like carrots. They're an accessory pigment, and they only pick up like one part of the light spectrum. So when we look at different pigments and what they do, basically what happens is they will absorb the light, and the light that they don't absorb will be reflected. Well, guess what? The color that they don't absorb is the color green. And that's why plants appear green to us, because they absorb the reds, the blues, the yellows, and then something like grass, chlorophyll A, full of chlorophyll A, can't actually absorb the green light. So the green light will then be reflected back at us, which our eyes will process as green. Now, in some cases, right, we look at, okay, we got a chlorophyll A, we got a chlorophyll B, they're working together to almost like fill in the gaps that they have. So chlorophyll A, pretty good at reds, oranges, not so good at yellow, but that's okay. Chlorophyll B can pick up and get some yellow. Both very good at blue, purple, violet. Neither of them very good at green though. So because of that, we're gonna see plants full of A and B. They're getting basically all the colors of the spectrum, but they're not gonna be absorbing that green. And if they're not absorbing the green, it means they're reflecting it. Let's take a look at another pigment here. So we see the chlorophyll, right? Once again, very good with red and orange, blues and purples. Carotenoids, on the other hand, you're gonna notice something interesting here. Once again, carotenoids found in carrots. Very, very good at blue, even a little bit of green, but what are they not good at? Carotenoids are not very good at red, orange, and yellow. So that's why carrots, they're absorbing blues and greens and reflecting the orange color, so then carrots appear orange to us. Now, the last thing I want to go over is actually a really interesting thing here, is why leaves change color in the fall. So leaves on plants appear green to us, and they appear green to us because, once again, they're filled with chlorophyll A and all these accessory pigments that basically pick up every single color except for green. However, once kind of, fall rolls around, the temperature changes, there's not as much sunlight, there's not as much water, the plant starts to realize, it's not a great time to do photosynthesis, so it's actually going to stop making chlorophyll A. So chlorophyll A is actually going to start to break down. So chlorophyll A is going to break down, revealing the other accessory pigments. So I'm going to go back a couple slides here. Like, what happens if we got rid of chlorophyll A? Like, pretend chlorophyll A wasn't here. and it was just chlorophyll B. Chlorophyll B would still function, taking in your blues, your purples, but it would also not do a very good job with the reds and oranges. So now those leaves that first appeared green to us, because the A was taking in the reds and the oranges, well, if the A is no longer there, those reds and oranges are going to start to show through. And now I get to see leaves that are red and orange and yellow and brown and all these cool colors that happen in the fall. And that's just simply because the primary pigment, the chlorophyll A, is breaking down, revealing those accessory pigments. So next lesson, we're going to split it up into two different parts, the light dependent and the light independent reaction. So we're going to focus on the light dependent reaction, looking at how that process works and all the different steps involved. So thanks again for watching, and we'll chat soon.